Caetano, you in following, and I told Caetano that this conversation would be on his book and on Tarsila, but you stressed in recalling those moments in the book the importance of modernities. And I have to underline a fact that impressed me. This is a book that was first published in 1995. Actually, this is a book that is a collateral consequence of a commission from New York Times. I think the New York Times commissioned you an article on Carmen Miranda, and then you ended up writing this book.
Then a publisher, he read it and said, this guy could write a book. Then he called me. Yeah. And George Andreu from Knopf. That's why I wrote it. I did it. It took more than 1 year for him to convince me to write it.
Well, good for him. Good for us. But you say, and I was saying, and so it was published in 95, and Caetano has this respect for nuances in this book, and he never say modernism in singular. He always refers to modernisms, to modernities in plural.
I never noticed it.
Well, because you are effortlessly intelligent, Caetano, like Tarsila. But I think that is incredible, because it is a whole issue about the plurality of modernities rather than a canonic, hegemonic modernity. And if you go through your text, and if we go through your text, there is never a mention of modernity in singular. But you stress the importance of that, and you refer to your dialogues and friendship with Augusto de Campos, with Haroldo, with Decio Pignatari. And you say this beautiful thing, that you learn from then the love of all that has been conquered by modernisms, and the love for all what unfolded from it, as a way to overcome the opposition between center and periphery, in that rediscovery and refoundation of Brazil. I am quoting you, that went through the anthropophagic project. You saw there an aggiornamento of, but also the emancipation from European avant-garde, both things, no? And this, I think, is really beautiful and relevant vis-a-vis an artist such as Tarsila, and vis-a-vis the intention of this exhibition. You say, recalling the lesson you drew from your exchanges with the concrete poets, and notably from some articles written by Augusto and Decio, that you learned that modernity was not something against the past, but rather against the obsolescence of the past, like a fight, a struggle, so that past is not confined into obsolescence, but rather re-enlivened, re-enlivened today. And you say this beautiful thing, Stravinsky and Schoenberg seem devoted to make us listening to Bach with better ears, rather than making us stopping listening to Bach in order to listen to their music. And you say, art is terrible and difficult. One does not leave untouched, from Velázquez, Mozart, and Dante. So that thing about the fact that modernity was not against the past, but rather against the obsolescence of the past. I think that what you did, you guys, and you particularly with Oswald and Tarsila and the Anthropophagy, was to save them from obsolescence and to bring them back to life today. And I think it's something beautiful. I like to...
In fact, I think that Oswald and Tarsila and many of them knew that and lived that reality, because other people followed what I would call a kind of vulgar futurism.
Vulgar futurism.
And this vulgar futurism had the ambition of being the denial of the past. But this was done not to say Velázquez is worth nothing. This was done to say you cannot pass as if nothing by Velázquez. It's in fact, it gave more life to the tradition than denied it. It's a dialectical thing, but this aspect cannot be disregarded.
And I understand that, because our friend Aracy Amaral,
wonderful.
Wonderful.
Her book is fantastic.
That book is the most
and
incredible.
I met her in São Paulo because of the book.
Aracy is the most important art historian and the most acknowledged specialist on Tarsila. And we will have a conversation with her and Carlos Cilio, an artist who was also active during the 1960s and 70s and who wrote a beautiful text called La Querela do Brasil. We'll have a conversation with them here in April. But Aracy has warned us, has warned Caetano, and has warned me that Tarsila is not a tropicalista. Very seriously, and I think she's right. No, she's not. She could not have been a tropicalista. And you were telling me the other day, these are not tropicalista colors. That's true. She's so refined. But somehow, I insist, you made her tropicalistas.
She's more than that. She's the nucleus of something that anthropophagy that was, for us, when I read the manifesto and Oswald's books, as I told, I felt like this guy was seeing things the way I want to know how to do, And she was in the center because it was a painting by her. And in fact, if you look at it, it synthesizes it all, Yeah. It reminds us of the old cliche that one image is worth thousands of words. But Oswald wrote thousands of words that
are worth thousands of images.
Are worth a lot.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. No. No, it's just we in the catalog we reproduced a fragment of Elio Eschbauer scenography for O Rei da Vela, which is so close to this cacti in Tarsila. But it's true that when we see, different. For example, if you see Caetano's record from 89.
I'd love you to have Elio Eschbauer here speaking about it. Because he's a genius. He's an incredible guy, and he's really cultivated
the cover of
visually and literati. Well, I wanted to form an adverb, but I was not able to.
No, but it's true that when you see Caetano's Estrangeiro.
Yeah. The cover of Estrangeiro is the reproduction of the stage design, stage set for O Rei da Vela by Elio Eschbauer.
And that's true that.
And it was. I'll tell you, it was Paulinha. She was 16, I think, and we were living together in the south part of Rio, and I was in the bathroom, brushing my teeth or shaving. And she was in bed, and then she was in bed watching television. Then she said, Caetano, come here. This is so much like your things, Then I looked at the television. It was the image of O Rei da Vela with Elio's scenography. And I said, you don't know what you're saying. This is totally right, and I'll call Elio and ask him for us to use on the cover of Estrangeiro, an album I did with Arthur Lindsay, partly recorded in New York, right? And we put as Elio had the maquette for the stage for the scenography for the stage set, and he agreed to do it, and the cover is the same thing. The cover of Estrangeiro is Elio's O Rei da Vela.
Caetano, one last question before we open the Q&A sessions. I guess you have questions for Caetano. And it's about, but Tarsila said at some point that she knew she was dealing with bad taste colors, that she was dealing with folk colors, colors that the bourgeoisie would consider bad taste colors. And that thing about high and low, which the other day you were telling me, that's much more relevant here than in our countries. But you were dealing with that too at the Tropicalista period with, and
there's high and low everywhere. In the low area, for example, popular music, there is high and low. Yeah. There's always been. When Elvis Presley appeared, Frank Sinatra said, "This is rubbish," and he was right somehow. And but in a precise kind of dated criterion. But the criterions change.
Let me.
But we did that. We did that in popular music in Brazil. Things that were considered not respectable, like Roberto Carlos and the yeah groups, and and even international things like the Beatles, that we recognized whose importance or relevance or charm we recognized. The fact that we were recognizing that thing was a scandal in our environment, because that was low. Beatles was still low in 1966 in Brazil. And they made rock high. They made rock high. Rock was low here too. But most people don't remember. People who do remember don't anymore, because in America you are a lot more efficient in everything. I mean, when I'm talking only to the Americans. There must be some Americans here. Arthur is in America. I'm talking to you, Arthur. When you decide to change, something, then the change is done. Then it is done. Everybody agrees. Rock and roll is chic. Now it's chic.
Yeah. But
it wasn't.
There is an issue
not
about
even here.
There is an issue about that vis-a-vis our endeavor as curators in this country, and in particular in this institution that is like the Vatican of modern art, or it was. Fortunately, it was. Is that somehow there is a canonic view on modernism that rejects folk, that rejects something that comes from low. And I have to say that some of the issues that we had to overcome in order to produce this exhibition deals with that. I mean, we were told at some point, well, that looks like Carmen Miranda. Well, you're right. That's precisely why we want to bring that here. And let me just, and this is promised last quote from your book, but it has to do with it, because at that moment you were, as you were saying, even in your group, because you were touching upon that, there was resistance. And also, on the other side, you had the folkloristas, the nationalistic folklore. And so, but
they were very jazzy.
They are very jazzy. But you wrote this beautiful thing about, again, the way Augusto and Decio were addressing that. Other articles by Augusto, some introductory text and poems for Revista Invenção, contributed to my full understanding of our own approach. Especially one of those texts, a quasi-manifesto written by Decio Pignatari, was at the same time complex, suggestive, and extraordinarily convincing. It was a text to be shared with erudites, but if I could, I would have put it without edits in the cover of my record. It was once again a defense of concretist principle against the charges coming from the part of sociologizing nationalists. It was a critique against the folklorização, the folklorizing attitude that kept alive under development. And it was also an assumption of responsibility vis-a-vis all what goes through language by those who work with it. And it is a challenge about language. I think Tarsila addressed that, dealing with bad taste, dealing with folk art, and you magnificent had, for all your career, addressed that beautifully. And that's a...
Yes, you're right. But and I was really enthusiastic about what Desu had written then. But what I was saying is that, first of all, I didn't have an immediate contact with Tarsila's work, nor did it immediately touch me to do this or that. And then afterwards, seeing it more and thinking about it, I find these differences that I mentioned, you know, her color, when her, Aracy is very precise in
Yes.
that thing that when she says it, people now would say it's tropicalism, but it's not tropicalism. She disagrees. She says wrongly. When people say it's tropical, they say wrongly it's tropicalism. And I agree with that, Aracy, you know, because it's different. Her colors are from her, as I told before, from her, you know, childhood intimacy with paper flowers and things in the trunk in her old farm in which she grew, in the old farm in which she grew up. And our thing was counterculture. and it was indeed, in fact, the central person in this story of 1967 is Augusto de Campos, in my story, because of my talks with him. Not only led me to Oswald, but to what Desu had written, that review, that thing that they published, and the conversations with him, you know, they were very, very important to me. And regarding all the differences, both Augusto and I have always known the differences of position in the cultural scene and the history, in generation and everything. It's not disregarding all these things. Our dialogue was the central guide for me in these. Yeah.
Well, maybe you have questions. We have micros there, so please don't be shy. We have kind of 20 minutes for questions. And are you shy? Yes. Yeah, there is a question there.
Hi, thank you for talking and being here. I'm Brazilian, so I grew up seeing especially Abapuru and Anthropophagia's images on school textbooks. So I grew up seeing Tarsila, she's like a constant presence, but I basically had access to maybe 4 images of her work my entire life. I had never seen most of what is here, and I go to museums constantly. I see that a lot of what is here is in private collections. So I wanted to hear a little bit about what was the process of organizing, of accessing the works that are here, if there are works that you wanted to bring and couldn't, and lastly, if are there any talks about taking this show to Brazil?
Okay. Well, you know, organizing an exhibition is complicated, as all endeavors are complicated. There is no simple things in life. But about works that we would have loved to have here, yes, there are a couple beautiful works that were not able to come for these reasons. And, you know, the owners are sick or very old, and so it wouldn't be possible to get the work. Particularly one beautiful painting called A Lua, the moon from this period. There is a second social political painting that I love, which is Segunda Classe, and also. But anyway, I think the galleries the dimension of these galleries are perfect for the amount of works that we have here. And if we would have gotten those, we would have been in trouble. In terms of public versus private, I think there are a lot of works in public collections. Maybe, they are not all in one city, but Cuca, it's in an important museum in Paris. Autorota in Bahia, Antropofagia is at the Pinacoteca at Sao Paulo, Distancia, it's in the Pinacoteca at Sao Paulo, Operários, it's at the Palace of Municipal Government of Sao Paulo. So there are many works in public collections in Brazil. It's true that, you have to go from the outskirts of Sao Paulo to the Sao Paulo downtown or to Rio de Janeiro to see Urutu. So the opportunity of seeing all these gathered here is really unique. And I guess, at least for us here in this country, it's going to be quite difficult to get this opportunity again. So it's a privilege that we have, and we are very grateful about with the generosity of the lenders. And so traveling the show, no, I think it's impossible. We will be killed by the owners. Who already start calling, we want our painting back. We for example, to give you a sense of the complexity of these exhibitions, in order to get a Vaporú, we had to send our dear Karen travel to Buenos Aires with a couple of, it's a diptych. The most important Frida Kahlos that we have here at the museum were shown there while we have a Vaporú here. And as you know, maybe you don't know, Tarsila was also, during this blossoming 1920s, a great collector. She met so many artists. She met Brancusi, Eric Satie, Sansara, the Delaunay, and she had a great collection. And among the jewels of her collection was one of the largest Eiffel Towers by Delaunay, that is now a jewel in the collection of the Art Institute of Chicago. So that painting is right now at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Universidad Sao Paulo, while A Negra is here. So those kind of, negotiations in order to get A Negra. And obviously our dream was to have these three paintings all together. I give you a secret point of view. The curator's secret point of view is that corner. You stand at that corner, you see these three paintings all together, and you see the beautiful transformation. But I wouldn't say that this has been extraordinary in terms of organizing an exhibition. All of them are complicated, but I am very happy that we were able to do that, and I worked beautifully with Stephanie, and I am very grateful to her to Chicago. Another question for Caetano? Well, Augusto.
Hello. Caetano, thank you so much for coming. Luis, thank you for bringing Caetano. I don't know, my name is Augusto. I don't know if you remember, me and Jasvan interviewed you for the radio here, over the phone. But my question for Caetano is, how do you explain yourself? How do you explain your existence, that you are the source and the, let's say, target of all the influences in Brazil, and you are a poet, you are a philosopher, a musician, you are the face of our country, just like Tarsila was the face of our country visually. And so that's one question. The other one is, where is your nose pointing to right now, in terms of...
É sobre a sua figuração como filósofo, poeta, quase como Vaporú. Mas a segunda é para onde você está olhando agora.
The thing is, I don't understand English. It's true. I was, I can talk somehow, but I have a hard time listening and hearing English. It's a kind of another planet language for me. So I find it hard. I only understand English when I have subtitles. And I do understand English when I have subtitles, because when I read the subtitle, I recognize what had been said in English. Then I had all that English that had just passed. But when I am face to face, hearing somebody speaking English, I hardly understand. You see, I didn't understand. Portuguese, I'm also growing deaf. All this is true, totally true. But what did you say in Portuguese? No. He translated it for me, and I am. When I was a child, I believed I would be something like other people would know what I thought or something I would do. I had this idea. It was not a will. It was a kind of a recognition. I realized that I didn't want it. I just thought that was going to happen. And I thought of philosophers. And I thought I was going maybe to be a philosopher, because I had seen images of Socrates, people, drawings of Socrates. And I had heard Descartes' famous statement, I think that therefore I am. That in Portuguese we translate, therefore I exist. Everybody in Portuguese translates that. It's a philosophical problem, because exist is not the same as being, Existing is not the same as being. And but anyway, I heard that sentence, and I thought I would mix, because I thought it was total, I think, therefore I am. It was totally saying the basic thing of everything, And I thought, and I heard it was a philosopher who had said that. And I thought that philosopher, Socrates, had said that, the image of that man. So I thought maybe when I'll grow up and I'll be a guy like that with a beard and say things like, nobody knows that other people exist, not one person. I don't know if the rest of things that I see and feel and smell and hear are real, because I cannot go out of myself, And I thought I was going to grow up to say things about this, to go deeper in that sentence by Descartes, becoming a total, how do you say, I forgot the word. When you see only within, and but I never thought. When I grew up, I thought I was going to be a painter. I started drawing and painting, and but I learned songs that I heard on the radio, and I loved songs, And I grew up knowing songs, but I never planned I'm going to work with music. I played a little piano, and I learned easy songs to sing and play in the piano. And then when we moved to Salvador, my mother bought a guitar, Then I'd play, and then I went to school, and I grew up, and I thought, of course, I didn't respect those things that I had thought when I was a child. So I thought I have to arrange my life. Maybe I'll be a teacher, or I'll be a painter. But then I loved cinema, going to the cinema, and to the movies, and I thought I was going to direct movies, to make films. But then, making films is, it's expensive and takes time, and making songs is easier, and I mean, and popular music in Brazil is very strong. It's always there. The strength of popular music in Brazil itself caught me, So that's why I ended up making songs. But I kept on reading. I went to the philosophy school, but I only attended it for about 2 years, because in the second year there was the coup d'etat in Brazil, and everything changed, and the environment was unpleasant and difficult. So I left, but I was studying philosophy. But then somebody called my sister Maria Bethânia to sing in Rio, and I went with her. My father asked me to take care of her, and I had songs that I had written. She sang one of them, recorded. People liked it, and then when I saw I was in the business.